Samantha Irvine has stepped away from her position as a ring announcer in the WWE to the shock of the entire wrestling world, not even just the WWE universe. We're going to talk about why she may have done this, why and how we got here, and what we know about it so far, as well as everything else in Black wrestling from the past week. You're tuned in to Wrstlxtra.
Yo, this is Wrstlxtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, always joined by my trios team, the Real House of Black, Mex, the WrestleManiac, if you will, Yeet, and of course, the omnipresent man, say his name, he will appear, that is the Professor Gerard Bonner. The final announcement, as I coined it, Samantha Irvine has shocked the wrestling world by announcing that she has left the WWE. Not that she's leaving, not that she's planning to leave, but she has gone. The announcement was made via social media just hours before Raw. And yeah, guys, just give me your first thought when you first read this announcement. Mex, I'll go to you first. What was your first thought when you saw it?
Couldn't believe it, mate. I was absolutely gobsmacked. Of course, I think immediately everyone that came to everyone's head is AEW. Her husband to be is over there. I thought that, before obviously things have started coming out now, but I thought obviously it seems like they are about to launch a new show in the near future on Fox, and I thought this was maybe I don't want to say higher platform because it's not, but like a platform for her, and she would be like the anchor for that show, because I think Justin Roberts is incredible, and I don't think he's going to necessarily get pushed aside for her. Yeah, I just thought, how, like, why? Like, this is the pinnacle. She's arguably reached the pinnacle, and maybe that's why. But like, I just thought just everything over the last year in terms of every match on WrestleMania, announcing that both nights, Lillian Garcia, given the approval as well. I just thought, why? We're about to enter the Netflix era. That's surely going to bring more eyes to you, more opportunities. And from what has come out, I guess, since, it seems like this was in the making. This isn't like a snap decision or anything like that. So, but it's still very kind of shocking. Just not someone I thought we would be sitting here, kind of discussing as a major point as someone that's leaving, but it's happened.
Gerard, what was your first thought?
It was pretty shocking. As you can imagine, she is, when you start thinking about, we talk about eras and things of that nature, she is definitely one of the defining voices of this era, and to the point where, you look generationally throughout sports, and you have to be really, really, really good for people to know your name as a ring announcer. I think those positions that are not necessarily in your face on camera kinds of positions where your job isn't to get over per se, to be recognized, for people to know your name past what I call the liner notes generation, right? Where, the folks who knew about liner notes in music were the ones who could read who the producers were and read who the engineers were, but those were not the artists. And so when you look at positions like ring announcer, commentary, referees, those aren't those kinds of positions where people go, that's my guy, that's my girl. But she stood out in a way where you could not ignore her. And so I definitely think it's shocking, as people figure, you're on top, what could make you want to walk away? So it was definitely shocking. And as the internet does, and everybody else does, you start asking questions, why, we don't understand. And as I've told people, in the last 24 hours. Give it time. We will
Mhm.
discover, we will learn. And already we have indications in terms of what's going on.
As Mick said, and as a lot of people would have thought, everyone straight away thinks as soon as someone leaves WWE, it means they're going to AEW. There's been talks, there's the chance, there's a possibility. But Ricochet, her partner, was very quick to kind of chop those, rumors down and said she's not coming to AEW, which is great. I can't even see. We've said it multiple times, even about Ricochet himself, as to asking the question, why would you want to go from WWE to AEW at this point? Maybe if we were talking 3 years ago, when we were talking about wrestlers in, 3 years ago, and a lot of them made the move from WWE to AEW, we were like, yep, of course you need to, because it's just not working out. WWE wasn't what it is today. But now, and especially after, like you said, Gerard, she's kind of made her name a standout part of this new era of WWE. She was just as recognized as any of the talent that we see in the ring. And you ask the question, so why would you leave? But I guess it's emerged, today, that it's down to her wanting to focus on a music career and things like that. And I think people forget that that's what she was doing before she was discovered by Mark Henry, before Mark Henry kind of introduced her to wrestling and encouraged her to find a career either as a wrestler, ended up being a ring announcer, of course, and made the name that she made. But still, at that same time, Gerard, what do you think, in your mind, we don't know, so this is pure speculation, but in your mind, what makes you think that she would still want to leave WWE, being in the position that she was, being as recognized as she is, to pursue music and step away from WWE altogether?
So this is actually, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because one of the things that is so different about the pro wrestling industry today and those who seek to enter the industry today is, for a generation of people, getting to the WWE and pro wrestling in general is the apex. It's the top of the heap. For other people, it's a stop along the road. I think we first started seeing this in the commentary world when people like Jonathan Coachman and even recently like Caleb Braxton, people who would come to the WWE, and instead of the indies being the launching pad to land on WWE, that's where you go, WWE ends up being the launching pad to go to ESPN or to some other form of entertainment to be well known. I will say that I think this is one of the interesting challenges about sometimes how WWE can look at talent. And let's talk specifically about the NIL program, okay? So the NIL program is one where WWE made a conscious decision to say, we're not going to go to the indies to find our next stars. We're going to go find our stars from college, from people who have never stepped foot into a wrestling ring. On one hand, that's great because they don't learn any of the, perhaps bad habits of the indies. And I say bad habits because the indies are a great place, but most indie spaces are not on television. So one of the biggest adjustments that you make in going from the indies to WWE is how you operate on television, WWE style. How to bring your matches to a space where it's not necessarily all spots, but it's stories being told. Now, the flip side to that is people now see the success of The Rock, the success of Batista, the success of a John Cena, who have viewed the success of the Bellas, you could argue, who have used pro wrestling, and it has been a launching pad into Hollywood. So now some of the people that come into the sport aren't coming in with the intention of staying for 20 years. They're coming in to do 5 to 7 hot, good years and then go into entertainment. I mean, and they're not even necessarily being quiet about it. Jade Cargill, when she came to WWE, flat out said, for where I want to go, WWE is the place. And I know I only have a few years left before I want to go into Hollywood. So what I don't think most of us understand is for someone like Samantha Irvine, who prior to WWE was on America's Got Talent,
right,
and was singing, and even and Mex can attest to this, even when we saw her at Wale Mania this year, she came in a musical capacity. She didn't come out to announce anybody. She came in a full music capacity playing her flute, you know? So I think what most people miss is the WWE for some people. For some, it's the apex. For others, it is a launching pad into other forms of entertainment. And I think for Samantha Irvine, who, while she is a wrestling fan, her dream has always been music. Her dream has always been singing. And so now she gets to fulfill the next part of her dream. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not. Of course not. It is being reported that, you know, she tried to do these things while still holding on to her career in WWE. Mex, why do you think that probably wasn't possible? Like we've seen, as Gerard has mentioned, The Rock, Batista. We've seen it with The Miz, Roman Reigns, who have done both. You know, gone into making films and still had, you know, a wrestling schedule. Why do you think it might be different for Samantha compared to them?
I mean, this is probably a question that Triple H needs to prepare an answer for come his next press conference, because there is something to say to exactly that. Now, obviously, this is a new era. A lot of those names you mentioned was under another regime, and they might have worked out something around that. I do think it is a question, though, a very valid question, because we are looking at someone the likes of a Pat McAfee, who is allowed to return to do American football for however many months during the year, and then he just walks back into commentating at WrestleMania. So I do think, you know, it's like, yeah, why couldn't she do this, and why couldn't others? They have a plethora of very talented other ring announcers in the WWE, even at the speed that we saw. You know, Lillian Garcia is all of a sudden backstage at Raw. Lillian Garcia is now announcing Raw. Like, they could have surely worked out some type of part-time schedule for Samantha Lee to step away for a while. Someone as experienced as Lillian Garcia comes back in. Or, you know, you have Alicia Taylor that can come from SmackDown. I'm sure she would happily, you know, maybe want to do Raw as it's, you know, the what do you call it? The main show, whatever the word is. Yeah, it's, you know, the flagship. So they've got people, and I'm sure they've still got ring announcers that we haven't even seen learning the job and kind of, you know, jogging away with that. So I think it's very odd that, again, from just what's been reported today, that this is a decision that she had apparently made about a year ago. That she was not re-signing, that they couldn't arrive at you know, how they were going to balance these two things. And yeah, I just feel it's a major loss on the WWE part, because it's like, why wouldn't you find a way to play ball with someone who has effectively become the voice of the WWE universe, you know, of this kind of new school, like Gerard said. Someone that they now have a whole new style of content in terms of recording her reactions, because of just how animated and great she was, and how the fans fell in love with how she would either put personality on people's names or just deliver, you know, some of those epic announcements, like Cody announcement when he won at WrestleMania. It's very odd, and WWE are going to have to answer to, yes, why some people can do this and others can't.
I'm gonna respond to that and say a couple of things. One, I think a Pat McAfee, kind of the difference between a Pat McAfee and Samantha Irvine in this case is what Pat McAfee is doing is seasonal, right? So the college football schedule runs from September to January. And so, you know, again, I think there's opportunity if that's not just what WWE wants to do, but if that's what Pat McAfee wants to do. And I think in this conversation, we may be leaving out, what does Samantha Irvine actually want? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think what's hard for us as wrestling fans and wrestling aficionados, for us, and I don't know if I've been vocal about it, but for me, WWE is kind of the pinnacle for me. You know, now there are other things that I look to do, and I understand the idea of trying to be able to do both. We don't know where she wants to go in her music career and how that would impact her ability to do WWE and vice versa. You know, and the question is, which is the bigger dream for her? You know, if the dream is to say, hey, I've done this. Like, I know some people, I won't name names, but I know some people who had the chance to go back to WWE, but in their own heart of hearts, they were happy with the fact that they spent time there, but they didn't feel like they needed to go back to be able to accomplish whatever their lifelong dreams happen to be. We're not all in that space. And so I don't know. And again, I think even looking in the way how WWE responded, you know, them mentioning last night that Samantha Irvine has chosen to pursue some other things and that we honor her and that we love her. If she left under poor terms or bad terms, that wouldn't have happened. It didn't happen with Ricochet, if we're completely honest. Ricochet got written off of television, pretty much never to be mentioned again. Nobody said, hey, we appreciate he's the first speed champion. We thank him for none of that happened. So I think, you know, just judging from everything that's been out there, what's been said, and then also understanding kind of the new wave of wrestlers and wrestling personalities, you know, it's shocking to me to see just how it's changed. When I say how it's changed, wrestlers from the 80s and 90s, that's all they ever wanted to do in their life. To the point where when they left the business, it was so hard for them to leave, they kept coming back, right? And then we kept going, Ric Flair, will you please retire, sir? You are 78 having heart attacks in the middle of the ring. Please retire. But what's happening now is today's wrestler and wrestling personality is saying, hey, I have a time frame that I want to do this. And after that time frame, I want to do something else. And so I think in this particular case, I don't think this was a scenario of, you know, WWE being unreasonable, saying, hey, you have to either do this or have to either do that. I think she may have, and again, I haven't talked to Samantha, so I can't say what she's thinking. But, you know, the music industry I can talk about because I'm involved in that. And I can say that that is not a seasonal kind of job. That is not a space where, hey, I'm going to go work on my record and then come back and do this, because then you've got to promote the record. You got to tour the record. You got to do all. So that is as consuming as, you know, being in the position that she's in, front face. If perhaps she was not the face of Raw, the face of all of the PLEs, the face of WrestleMania when it comes to that, then maybe she might have been able to figure out a way to balance the responsibilities between pursuing a full-time music career and, you know, doing this. So I think, long story short, it does boil down to ultimately what she wants to do, and responsibilities as a future recording artist are much, much different than a commentator in a sport that has a season, whose season is 3 to 4 months a year.
And I think as well, the other difference here is that, you know, Pat McAfee made his name in that space as well. So WWE took him away from that, as opposed to kind of, you know, made him who he is. Yes, it's helped, you know, elevate his profile in many ways, but he had a profile beforehand. And I think even when we mentioned, you know, the likes of The Rock and The Miz and people who have done films, again, filming is a seasonal thing. It takes a few months, depending on, you know, the film itself and whatnot. But once that film has been out there for a month or two, you don't need to have to do anything again. As you said, Gerard, you know, with singing, and if you're pursuing it, you know, to a higher level, that's nonstop. That's not something you can do kind of part-time if you're serious about it. It's not something you can do part-time. It's not something you just do on the side. So I understand there are two ways of looking at this. in terms of, you know, where other people have got themselves to, or where or who they were before, but then also, you know, how strongly Samantha wants to pursue, you know, the music career, and something that she wanted to do way before she even had any kind of possibility of being in WWE. What kind of came to my head while everyone's speaking as well is, you know, Mex mentioned it already, and it's something that we found out earlier today, is that, you know, this was something that she's been trying to negotiate or made mention of almost a year ago, definitely a few months ago. What's interesting now is that her and Ricochet are obviously, you know, engaged or married. I can't remember what stage they're at. I always forget. But can you imagine the conversations that they were having before Ricochet even left? Because when we heard the news of Ricochet leaving and going to AEW and whatnot, we were questioning, you know, oh, is he going to leave is he going to leave Samantha in the WWE and blah, blah. If Samantha had already been talking about this a year ago, they already knew that this was going to happen. So it might have made it so much easier for Ricochet to leave. And it probably wasn't even a factor of, oh, I'm going to leave her alone. He probably knew, well, she's leaving soon enough anyway. So do you think that kind of, you know, helped him make the decision to move to AEW, almost knowing that there was a strong possibility, or the conversations were already being had, that Samantha was going to leave the WWE?
I think it helps in the sense that, yeah, I know at least for the long term, I'm not leaving anyone behind in WWE. You know, she will be on the road soon or whatever. She wants to plan this and do that, whatever. Yeah, that it probably helps. And AEW have obviously a reduced schedule, so he probably just does his one night on a Wednesday, whatever show he's going to end up on for the Wednesday, and then goes home. So yeah, he's there with her. So I guess from that point of view, it's not like he's still going to be working the rigorous WWE schedule, although it's changed over the years. And she might be in other places doing her music stuff. So yes, I guess there is some type of planning there. I'm not going to get into a discussion today whether Ricochet made the right decision or not.
We won't do that again. Not for the fourth week in a row.
Yeah, that's on him. Although I will say I was happy to see him get time to cut a promo in a ring on Collision.
In a ring, that was nice.
Week. But yeah, I think look, all power to them, and obviously as you are a couple, they're engaged. They're not quite married just yet. You have these discussions. These are your life choices and things like that, of course. So they 100% would have planned this from a year ago, knowing his contract is coming up. Her contract expires around this time as well. Yeah, we're all just kind of seeing it play out now, I guess.
Yeah. How different will WWE feel now that Samantha has gone? Obviously, we saw Lillian Garcia jump in on Raw last night. As the internet does, a few mistakes were noticed from Lillian. Gerard, how different does it already feel different that Samantha's not there?
Well, I think here's the challenge. The challenge is Lillian Garcia is still a very familiar voice to a lot of wrestling fans. So does it feel different? Yes. But does it feel foreign? No, because Lillian is such a familiar voice from a not too distant era in WWE. You know, in terms of people being upset with Lillian making mistakes and things of that nature, I'll just say this, that I think people will never know what it takes to do that. They will never know. Most people don't even like public speaking. Many people could not get onto this platform and say something without potentially making a mistake or an error. Let see, I just did one. Let alone let alone being on international television in front of 15,000 people at a given time. Okay. So I think that we have to show grace to somebody who has not been a full-time ring announcer in 8 years. You know, let's consider that. We don't know how much time she had to prepare for this. And amid all of the time that you have to prepare, she's not in a space where she could go somewhere and practice in front of an audience without there being cameras there going, oh my God, can you believe Lillian Garcia was at this NXT live event? Oh my God, can you believe that Lillian Garcia was at this WWE live event? Like, she can't do that. So, you know, and a lot of the names, a lot of the situations are a little bit different than they were 8 years ago. So I say, give her some room, give her some space. You know, she, yeah, it's just different. It's just different. And it's a different kind of pressure. I can relate to the pressure from the perspective of when you're on and you forget something or your mind goes blank or what have you. Because again, a lot of times you'll see people doing this and they have note cards in front of them and things of that nature. She had none of that. And again, people don't understand how difficult that is until you've been in those shoes. So I say, you know, show Lillian some grace. She showed plenty of grace and kindness when she was in the ring with Samantha. Made sure she gave Samantha all kinds of props, made sure Samantha knew she was next. So I say, let's just give Lillian a little bit of grace.
For real. Anything more to say on this shocking announcement before we move away?
I will say this one thing. Alicia was on Twitter between yesterday and today, and some fan had made the assumption that she would just automatically go to Raw, and she chose to respond, and her response was, I'm on SmackDown. Why do people think that I would leave SmackDown just because someone left the company? So, you know, Alicia is obviously very dedicated to SmackDown, and rightfully so. I also think that people don't consider, you know, SmackDown and Raw are not held in the same cities.
Nope.
There's a lot of travel involved, and people may have forgotten that literal 2 to 3 week run that Alicia did where she was on every WWE program, Raw, SmackDown, NXT. She was literally crisscrossing the country, you know, doing that kind of thing. That's a lot of wear and tear on a particular person. So yeah, I think, you know, Lillian handling Raw, Alicia handling SmackDown, again, keeps continuity in both of those spaces. And I think things are going to be good.
Fair. Does Mike Rowan go back to Raw and they find someone else on NXT, or do we just keep
Mike Rome is an NXT, and I think this is the other thing that people don't understand. What people may consider to be a demotion on one end actually is considered grace, kindness, and benefits on the other, because Mike Rome was actually very interested in being close to his family, which is why he chose to go back to NXT. That was a choice, and it worked out really well for him. They just recently had a baby. These are the things that he knew that most people aren't privy to. So,
yeah. Fair. We move away from Nissan, but we keep it with the ladies of WWE. We saw Lash Legend take on Piper Niven on SmackDown on Friday. Her and Jakara Jackson also made an appearance on Raw yesterday as well. Mex, just talk to me about Lash's performance on SmackDown and what these ladies, her and Jakara, have been up to in this past week.
Yeah, it was a performance of someone that has been here before. Like I think we said last week with their little quick stint they got against the tag team champions, it was very much, well, if we've got 2 minutes to do this, we're going to make every second of that 2 minutes count. And I feel like Lash done the exact same thing this past week. yeah, I think I put on my Instagram or maybe on my Twitter that her stock is rising. Like, buy stocks in Lash Legend right now if you don't feel, you know, if you're doubting, is she going to be someone that's going to be the finished article? I think she's, even the faith that they're showing to kind of, one, put them as a tag team on these shows, and then now give her a singles opportunity on SmackDown as well, in a place where, you know, we get what, 1-2 SmackDown women's matches. You know, someone from NXT has stolen one of those positions ultimately, or at least got her opportunity, should I say, at one of those positions. So it just says to the good work that she's doing, the story that they're telling. I think obviously they're telling a tag team story here, which is great, because the women's tag division, you know, it's been the center of a lot of discussion for a very long time. So it looks like we finally got some moving parts with the champions and potential challengers with Damage Control, and Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend, maybe even Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez look to enter the fray, and some others. Like, this is finally what a division should look like. A lot of moving pieces, and we're kind of wondering, right, who's next up, sort of thing. But yeah, Lash Legend looked great. Beating Piper Niven was great. You know, I know Piper Niven isn't necessarily booked the best and most consistently, but we only have to look back to the summer where she had a women's championship match against Bayley. So, you know, it shows the level of what you have to beat, what they put in front of you, and she did exactly that. And yeah, I think this is, we're beginning to see, like I say, just a faith in Lash Legend, even just as a singles person, which is getting back to what I guess they thought she was going to be when they first introduced her back in 2.0. This is someone now that I'm seeing that, you know, maybe whenever this tag stuff is over, and, you know, if they get the belts or don't get the belts, she should easily be now at least a challenger in that NXT title women's scene, because yeah, if she's got the confidence to be put on SmackDown and be given singles matches, why shouldn't she be at the top of the card in NXT? So yeah, 2 for 2. I've been super impressed with what they've done over the past few weeks on SmackDown, her and Jakara, and even, you know, the little bits on Raw they're involving them in. Just she just looks clean, like the forearms over the barricade she's been handing out to these girls, and the pump kicks and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I'm really, really impressed.
To add to that, her finisher is wonderful. I think that finisher is brilliant. I think that finisher is brilliant. It shows her power. It shows technicality as well in how she has to get to it. I was going to say as well, like, you know, they chose Piper Niven, I'm sure on purpose. They could have put someone smaller in the ring to kind of even further show her power, or to show her dominance maybe. But I think for me, it was definitely this thing where they were like, right, we need to show exactly what this woman can actually do and just how good she can do it. Only way it's going to happen is with a Piper Niven. I don't think, apart from Nia Jax, probably a step too high, but apart from Nia Jax, there was no one else that, you know, they could put her in the ring with to kind of show that thing. Gerard, you know, Mex mentioned, you know, a future for her in NXT and what that looks like. Do you feel as though that's why this is happening? Or do you feel that there's a possible chance that Lash and Jakara could possibly win these tag team championships?
I think it's behind door number 3, which is Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson to SmackDown. I think that this is all an opportunity to see how they look and feel on the main roster. They have knocked it out of the park every single time they've shown up on Raw and SmackDown. They don't look like fish out of water. They look like they belong, that they're supposed to be here. The stance of both of them in the ring, they look like superstars. They don't look like, you know, NIL transplants. They don't look like, oh my God, we just got this opportunity from NXT. Ooh, they look like they belong in those spaces. And I think that's so exciting, given the history of Lash Legend, given the challenges that she's had, given the challenges that Jakara Jackson have had, for both of them to be viewed well enough to be put in these high profile spots. These aren't dark matches. You know, these are matches on prime time television on the USA Network, and they are knocking these opportunities out of the park. So whether they win the tag titles, whether they increase their stock at NXT, I think sooner than later, we're going to see them as regular members of the Raw or SmackDown division. I think probably SmackDown. They're doing an amazing job. Well, SmackDown actually might be a good idea because it gets us potentially Lash versus Nia. Again, that power match, which would be a wild one. Again, doesn't have to happen in the next 3 months, but the possibilities. I mean, again, seeing what Lash did against Piper was massive. You know, it was a huge move. So I think this is a great, great opportunity for them both. And I think what we're going to ultimately see, whether they become tag champs or not, they've got themselves a spot on the main roster.
Do Noam Dar and Ora Mensah follow them to main
so
roster?
This is what I was just thinking, because okay, I think the men's division at NXT, we've known all year pretty much that who left it was going to leave a big hole, and they are probably still trying to figure out and fill that hole right now. Noam Dar was set to, you know, kind of be one of Trick's first challenges, if I remember correctly, but then he got injured. Ora Mensah, we've seen over the summer, especially, they started using him a bit more. But he probably lands in the mid-card North America title picture before the main title picture, although he challenged for that, I think, not too long ago. So yeah, it's a funny one with the men because as metaphor, all of them, they were a really good act, and they might still have stocks. They might put the title straight on Noam Dar the minute he comes back, to be honest. Like, or this could be a result of maybe he's had a setback and it's like, okay, well, we can't hold the group. If he's having setbacks in his recovery, we have to do something with the rest of them, sort of thing. One or the other. But I would still like to see the likes of Metaphor, like the ladies, hold the tag gold, and, you know, Ora Mensah with the North American title, and Noam Dar with the NXT title. I would love to see it personally. But at the same time, like Gerard had mentioned, we have now put faith and are getting that faith repaid in people that look like they are ready WWE superstars. And WWE have been doing this thing since, you know, I guess Triple H has come in charge, where, you know, they test the waters with their NXT talent. They moved Bron Breakker up to SmackDown without him officially being drafted, and the Carmelo Hayes. And, you know, they've been doing this. And it looks like they're basically doing that again. They're just making sure, like, the crowd, there's a level of familiarity at the very least with these two talents in Miss Jackson and Lash Legend. And then maybe they still go on to have NXT runs for another 6 months to a year. But then when they arrive back, it's like, oh, do you guys remember these guys? They came up, they troubled this person, they done that, they went back down to NXT, they won this, they won that. And it's just like that bridge from NXT to main roster, it's like it's already made. This isn't, we're not introducing you to a brand new person that we need you to believe overnight. Like, remember what they done. Now these are the accolades they have won and come with. So yeah, just kind of making that transition a lot more seamless, which is very good as well, because these lot need to know as well what it takes to wrestle in front of however many 100 people in a PC that they see every week, every time they're wrestling, and then a brand new face in different cities, 10 to 15,000 people. It's two different things. However, the ladies are dealing with it well. But I do want Metaphor to be part of this journey. But it looks like the Meta Girls might leave the Mandem and go off on their own journey, to be honest.
The Meta Girls leaving the Meta Mans. Okay, fair enough. I too believe it would be better for the boys to join them as well. They're an amazing act, you know, as the four of them as well. But what the girls are doing is great. And even if it was to happen, you know, in the next month or so, the girls move to the main roster and, you know, the boys stay where they are, obviously, or No one does injured at the moment. But even with what Oral Ments is doing now, just being on TV, on NXT often, that alone, I think, is good enough for him as well. Especially, you know, for now. I don't feel, even with the girls, as much as they've taken the opportunity in the best way they can, I never felt as though they had to move up. You know what I mean? It wasn't a case of, right, you lot are taking too long, let's just move them up straight away. There is still a lot for them to do. So even if they don't move there, there's going to be more than enough for them to do. And I think it's brilliant in terms of what you mentioned, Mex, about, you know, WWE now doing this thing where we're getting to familiarize ourselves with some of this NXT talent before they moved up. As you said, you know, Bron Breakker happened with Breakker, happened with Hayes. It's happened with a couple of others as well. I think Axiom has made some kind of appearance as well, even just on speed, as much as it's not on TV, it's still another way for people to get familiar with them before kind of just thrusting them in our faces and saying, right, we need you to believe in this guy or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? So it's perfect. Another thing that's happened, but almost in the other way around, is obviously we saw a couple of weeks ago, Javon Evans take on Randy Orton. Losing to Randy Orton, but it raised his stock quite a bit. There was still high praise coming from all sections of WWE for his performance, and it led him to kind of, you know, having this opportunity in a triple threat match for the number one contender to face Trick Williams for his NXT championship. Javon came up short, but I'm sure everyone will say that out of all the three guys, him, Wesley, and Ethan Page, that it was Javon's show, that match, definitely. My question to you, Gerard, is what is next for Javon? He missed out on this opportunity. What do we now do with him to kind of keep him up there and keep him relevant?
I think there are a few options. Obviously, the development that's continuing to happen with him and Cedric is a good opportunity. They could find themselves in a tag team title match at some point. I think, much like what we were mentioning with Lash and Jakara, having Javon Evans in these spaces, whether it was him in the Fatal 4-Way, was it at Heat Wave, I believe, for the NXT Championship, or having him in the main event of the match against Randy Orton at NXT, or even in what we just saw last week, him being introduced to the main event picture is going to start having people think of him as main event Javon, right? And I think that's important because you don't want to have that view of him slip. So even these losses, which again, only one of them was one-on-one, and that being, of course, the Randy Orton piece, it allows him to show why he belongs in that picture, allows him to still grow a bit. And at some point, I do think we see him in a championship picture, whether it's the North American Championship, tag titles, or the main championship in NXT. He's proving that he is a main event commodity. And I think that is what the point of what we've seen these last few weeks have been for him.
Silent Booker Mex. What do you? How would you book? how would you book Javon for maybe the next few months, the rest of the year? Like, what do you think it would be a good way to put him out there and keep him relevant?
I think maybe for Javon, I think we might have to kind of challenge him in terms of, again, this is from a developmental point of view, giving him some really testing feuds with, like, say, really good talkers. And that might take them bringing down from the main roster people that aren't really being used right now. No names necessarily spring to mind. But I think with the wrestling side of things, there's very little that he can kind of necessarily learn more right now. Okay, everyone can get better, but we know the boy can wrestle, sort of thing. So no one's kind of testing that. I think the promos that he delivers are fun-loving. They're great. They're relatable for the NXT audience, especially. I think maybe, like I say, we need someone to kind of be a bit more kind of menacing with him, maniacal. It's kind of like what Sean Spears is trying to do at times with him. Be a bit more mentally challenging for him. But I would say someone that's not Sean Spears, respectfully, like someone that's a bit more like of a higher ilk sort of thing that can do that and play that game with him. I like his relationship with Cedric Alexander. For Cedric Alexander's point of view, I would love them to maybe do a tag team run or something like that. I think that could be very good. But yeah, like I feel like Javon just has this, like he's set for the stars. So we just need to prepare him in different ways that can kind of help to not even accentuate what he's bad at. I'm not even saying he's bad at this, but I think it's easy to go out there and kind of say something smart and slick and pop the crowd and stuff like that. But let's see some deeper character from him, not just the boy that's bouncy, that has all the WWE pictures from his childhood. Like, let's see something a bit more that he has to think about. Yeah, I think that, like I say, the safe thing is probably a tag team run with Cedric, but I think we need to start, especially because that men's scene is just not as strong as it once has been. We need to start preparing those single stars of next yesteryear and stuff like that.
I think an easy answer actually to your suggestion would actually be Wesley. Obviously Wesley was in the triple threat match as well. They've had their thing backstage before the match and the week before as well, and stuff like that. Wesley's on this whole thing of, you know, saying he's better than everyone and you're too young and whatnot. And you know, I think in the short term, that's definitely one way. It keeps them both relevant. It keeps them both, and you know, on top of the card and stuff as well. And the matches that those two could possibly give us is just unreal. Just to think about, we saw what they did together in the triple threat match alone. So I think that's definitely the easy and easiest answer to your question. And there's still this possibility of the tag team run as well. Again, in that same backstage segment, him and Cedric were talking to the NXT tag team champions, Axiom and Nathan Fraser. So there's a possibility of that happening too. And I think it would be beneficial for both Javon and Cedric. I believe I saw earlier today, I think it was, if not yesterday, that a few months ago, Cedric signed a new contract with WWE. So, you know, I'm sure he would want to sink his teeth into something that will keep him on TV, keep him relevant, all that kind of stuff. And him being Uncle Cedric, as much as that kind of makes him sound a little bit too old, but I think the relationship between him and Javon, I believe, is paramount, both, you know, on and off camera. You know, Cedric with the level of experience that he has, helping Javon along the way in the same way that we've seen, you know, Bianca and Jay do their thing. I think it would be a very good way of doing that as well. So I think, you know, there's no worry of, you know, just because Javon didn't win that match, that is now just gonna, you know, spiral and disappear or become irrelevant and all those kinds of things. And it's crazy to think that even though he's lost twice, everyone still talked about him coming out of both matches. So that it's done the job. It's done exactly what it needed to do. Moving on a little bit. Speaking of Cedric, an old friend of his made his own debut on AEW this past Wednesday against Leo Rush. And I'm telling you now, I call this man the silent bucket on purpose because Mex said something last week. Mex said something. Mex
Shelton Benjamin.
Listen, Mex said something last week, and it literally played out exactly the way he said. He said, you know, we were talking about, you know, what's going to happen with this match and whatnot. Mex was like, I really need to see them, or really need to see a more menacing, a more aggressive Shelton Benjamin. And oh my gosh, when I say I need to, I'm already licking my lips and salivating at the mouth at the possibility of Shelton Benjamin versus Konosuke Takeshita for the International Championship. Like run it next week. Sorry, Ricochet, run it next week. Because that performance from Shelton Benjamin was unreal. It was unreal. Mex, I'll leave you to talk about this. And even and even of course Lio Rush as well in that match. What were your thoughts when watching it, Max?
Yeah, obviously Lio Rush played his part, sold his backside off for Shelton. But I can't believe I've been watching Shelton for 20 years and this is the first time I'm seeing this sort of thing.
Right.
Like it's like new. Like I just couldn't believe how good he was. Like almost like he's been watching like the likes of a Randy Orton and these other kind of guys that, you know, no nonsense, just like he was absolutely just swatting Lio Rush like a fly out of the sky and all sorts, like beating him like he owed him money. Like it was absolutely crazy. Like it just flogged him about the ring. Like, and it's just like, for someone of his experience, his age, how like there's even amount, like obviously he's probably been in the gym a lot, not having to, you know, do the towns and stuff like that. He looks cut, he looks in great shape, he looks grizzled. For someone that's still got the baby face, still has a low haircut and everything, there's an amount of like experience in his face and grizzled with this persona that I absolutely loved it. And he's gonna do the exact same thing tomorrow night to Sammy Guevara, and I'm gonna absolutely love it again. And obviously this is, I guess, him building towards the Swerve match. This is happening in 2 weeks or so at the end of the month, where Swerve probably picks up the win there, but like in the interim of getting this, and Swerve's gonna have to work to beat this Shelton Benjamin, like, so that's gonna throw up a good match anyway. But yeah, this is Hurt Business, this is Hurt Syndicate. Like I'm really feeling like, yeah, you've made the stupid complaint and now you have to deal with the complaints officer. Like it was brilliant. It was honestly great.
Gerard, in your mind, why has it taken this long for us to see this Shelton? What's different here?
You know, sometimes I think you have to be in spaces where, number one, you're convinced of who you are. I think in the other spaces, you know, here's the challenge of doing something consecutively for so long. And in the space of entertainment, you're often held to being who you were. And so how we were introduced to you is how people want you to remain. And so Shelton Benjamin, even when he was a bad guy, never got to be the real bad guy. He never got to be dominant and menacing, because, you know, he's from he's got a collegiate background, and he you know, doesn't get himself involved in certain kinds of extracurricular activities. So sometimes people don't think he's got that kind of edge to him and don't allow him to show that edge. But I think being in a space like this where you get to show the edge, and that's absolutely what we saw. He was, I mean, for someone who has watched Shelton Benjamin pretty much his entire career, you might not expect to see anything new from him. He made all of us out to be liars, because he's like, oh, in the proverbial words of Mark Henry, I've got a lot left in the tank. And he unleashed all of it. It was amazing. And then he just looked like he didn't even break a sweat. It was like, okay, all right, now I feel like finishing this match, but I'm not going to end it until I feel like it. And it was, this Shelton Benjamin, he's right. He's right.
I also
MVP
believe
at times, was MVP. You could hear him on the outside. End the match. Come on, like end it, finish it, like
And he's like, nah, I'll do it when I want to do it.
MVP
has been great as well. He's been great.
Yeah, of course. Oh, of course. I was gonna say, like, even though we haven't seen the Shelton, I think a big part of me feels as though someone's actually drummed this into him recently. He's come out when he, not long after he left WWE, he had the interview with Chris Van Vliet, and I think he kind of asked him something along the lines of, you know, why didn't you achieve certain things, blah blah blah. And, you know, Shelton has said, like, he's too much of a nice guy. You know what I mean? He wasn't the one kind of like pushing himself in front or stepping on other people in order to get himself forward and all that kind of thing. So, you know, I don't think that this aggressive Shelton was necessarily natural, and he just wasn't given the opportunity to show us that. I feel as though very recently, and whether that be MVP, whether that be other people he's been speaking to recently, whether that be others influencing him, I feel as though it's definitely something that's come along recently. But at the same time, it's perfect in how we've said it so many weeks in a row about, you know, Ricochet and, you know, us wanting to see something different because we're seeing the same guy. He has said, this, you're going to see a different guy. You are going to see a different guy, and I'm making sure you see a different guy. Another thing I saw recently as well today was that, you know, he came, I think he was on a podcast and he was asked the question, you know, what made you go to AEW? And he said he had offers from other places. Impact was very tempting, but he still wants as many eyes on him as possible. You know, he's a lot older than the rest of them. He said he's not, you know, looking to retire anytime soon, but with the time that he has, or the little or the less time that he may have compared to others, he wants as many eyes on him as possible. And there is no other way to do that. One, in AEW, the only other place would be WWE, of course. And two, if you don't reinvent yourself, no one's watching. Right. You know what I mean? If you don't reinvent yourself in some way, no one's going to care. No one's going to watch. No one's going to notice. And I think he's just done, you know, probably a perfect job. And again, up until that match and that first minute or two of that match, in no way was I even considering thinking about Shelton Benjamin in any title picture in AEW, even with the 25 million belts that they have in that company. I wasn't even thinking, yeah, put him on this point. Now I'm like, TNT, International, Continental, him versus Okada.
Put him in the Continental Classic in December, even if it's just for the stellar matches, the stellar 8 or 6, however many matches he will give us. Like, that is where this character, this person belongs right now. And I'm happy you brought up that Chris Van Vliet interview, because I think I said on here at the time when it happened, I was pretty disappointed after watching that. And he was asked at the time, would you go back to WWE? And he said yes. And I completely understand that at the end of the day, you know, money is money. Bills have to get paid and stuff like that. But it's just like, if you were kind of prepared to go back, or at least you said you were, and probably just continue being Shelton Benjamin that we've seen for the however many last years sort of thing, which would have been a shame, because, you know, even though some will say, yeah, he's never going to be a world champion, no matter what the company or whatever, like, even just this little change has just given so much more life. Like, you know, if he beats Sammy Guevara tomorrow night, even if he loses to Swerve, that's a former world champion. You can lose to him, that's fine. But then picks it up again, and AEW will do a very good job of kind of cherry picking his matches and where he looks good, because he may not be the top guy. We're still expecting, I guess, Bobby Lashley to come into the faction and stuff like that. But if he's going to be the heavy, or he's going to be the step before Bobby Lashley, before you get to Bobby, he still has to look credible. Right. And like right now, in a land where we're saying certain people are going over there and just being the exact same person, this is so refreshing to just see him in a brand new company. It's televised, it's on the big screen, like you said he wanted, like, and he's just doing something different, and it's brilliant. It's honestly great.
You know, I try not to do this too much, but it's happening in my head. I'm just going to say it anyway. It's like, you know, we talk about people moving to AEW, and, you know, we've seen the likes of Jay Lethal, who won from being the longest reigning, you know, Ring of Honor champion, or combined days as Ring of Honor champion, and, you know, former Ring of Honor television champion, and all this kind of stuff. And he moved to AEW, and it was like, what did he do? What has he done? For a Shelton Benjamin to go there, it's almost like, why didn't Jay Lethal do that? Like, what happened? You know what I mean? So it then begs the question and the thought that, you know, as I said, you know, MVP must have come in to that room with Tony Khan or whoever it was and said, right, we want it this way. It has to happen this way. It has to be like this. It has to be like that. Otherwise, we're not doing anything. Otherwise, we're not signing. You know what I mean? So I can imagine that there are still so many things that we can expect to see from these guys if this is the treatment or the opportunity that Shelton Benjamin is getting to show himself in this way. And his next match is against Sammy Guevara, former TNT champion, current Ring of Honor trios and tag team champion, or whatever it is. You know, like, and this guy is one of the pillars. You know what I mean? And if we're expecting Shelton to beat Sammy Guevara as well, he'll have that on his resume, as well as facing a former AEW champion. And you know for a fact it's not going to be a walk in the park for Swerve. It's not going to be a walk in the park for Swerve at all. And I think very similar to when we were talking about Javon, I think we'll come away from that match talking about the loser more than the winner.
Potentially. Just to your point about Jay Lethal, what I will say is, as we all know, timing in wrestling is so important. It's so key. And to the point where, like, obviously on the pay-per-view, we saw Adam Cole return. And he returned, and I was like, oh, Adam Cole's back, and I done the whole baby and all of that kind of stuff. And then when I sat that back down in my chair and relaxed, I thought, even in today's landscape of AEW, you, sir, where do you fit?
Exactly.
Because you were great in 2021 when you came in, and we were really getting the WWE to AEW guys and all of those kind of indie guys coming in. But today, Adam Cole, now put to one side, we obviously know TK thinks this guy is, you know, literally blessed and highly favored in TK's book.
Right.
But like,
right.
Ultimately, he doesn't necessarily fit in everything that's going on right now. And granted, a lot is going on. But like you had to sign at a certain point, and maybe Jay Lethal signed at a point where it's just like, this is what's available for you, sort of thing right now. Where obviously bigger names, they're waiting on WWE X stars to come in. And yeah, is it too late for Jay Lethal to kind of reinvent himself and, you know, do something new? Possibly. I think we saw a lot of good stuff with him in the Continental Classic in December.
We definitely did.
A lot of good matches. He went on a losing streak. I think he lost all his matches, didn't he?
I believe so.
Because it was him and Daniel Garcia, and Daniel Garcia got like a last win or something like that. I think Jay Lethal must have lost all his matches. He spiraled a bit. They told that story, but then didn't really amount to anything. The whole group turned heel again with Jeff Jarrett and stuff. Jeff Jarrett's now a face. So it's like, yeah, like we had something, we lost it. Scorpio Sky looked like they were bringing him back to TV, bringing it back to TV with Private Party. Private Party in the recent weeks got on a rocket and just have left Scorpio Sky completely. Don't even know where he is anymore. So it's timing. A lot of those guys that came in at a certain point when AEW needed these kind of indie darlings and indie names to help build the company, I don't know if they need them anymore.
That's true. We saw Shelton Benjamin. Gerard, you've also seen Shelton Benjamin in the flesh. He had his match, a dream match against Jonathan Gresham at Arche. Tell us something more about Arche. I know that Arche 6 is coming up, and there's a few things very special about that show. Give us more.
Yeah, Arche 6 is on the way actually this Saturday, and it is getting us ready for the 1-year anniversary of Arche, which will happen on December the 7th. And leading into that, we found out at our last show that we are getting ready to crown our first Arche Wrestling Men's Champion. So a lot of the matches that will happen on this card are going to allow people to gain entry into the tournament. So I'm really excited about that. We're going to see the debut of Khan. He is on his way to Arche, which is crazy. I'm also excited about the Pan-African World Diaspora Championship. The world title is on the line. Shug D is defending against LeBron Cozone, and Cozone has been a trainer to the stars, including Javon Evans and several others. Trevor Lee, a lot of people have come through his school, so that's going to be special. There are a couple of women's matches that are very interesting to me. Karen Bam Bam Renee taking on Jada Stone. And I'm just still like blown away that this match is happening. And then Tootie Lynn Ramsey will be taking on the debuting Jordan Blade. And there's been a lot of conversation about Jordan Blade. So she's making her Ashe Wrestling debut, along with a big tag team match involving Darius Lockhart and Billy Dixon. If they can coexist and if they can, win their match, they'll both gain entry into the tournament. There's a Halloween Battle Royal that's happening. The winner of that will make his way into the tournament. So there's a lot that's going to be happening at Ashe 6, which is going down, of course, this Saturday in Charlotte. The previous show, which is Ashe, Smile Ashe is with you, is available right now at AsheWrestling.com. And a lot of great matches happened there. And I'm on commentary for that one as well, along with AC Mack and Caprice Coleman, a crazy team. It's kind of a dream team there. So check it all out at AsheWrestling.com, and you can get your tickets for this weekend at the website as well.
I've got a question for you. So I saw that they're revealing the championship belt on the show.
Yes.
Have you seen it yet?
Well, I've not seen it in the flesh.
Okay.
And I can say I have not seen whatever the final design is.
Okay.
So I do know that there's a lot of work and attention being put into it. I also know that if you pay attention to any of Ashe's graphics, the look of Ashe is very important. So I've got to imagine that the championship belt is going to reflect a lot of attention to detail. I can't wait to see it on Saturday. I cannot wait.
I'm intrigued to see what this belt looks like. I'm sure it's going to look amazing. Also, as well, you've not long come back from being in the Bahamas.
Yes.
Was it?
Yes.
Next time, take me with you. I'm still waiting for my invite and ticket. But just tell me what happened at the last All Caribbean Wrestling show in the Bahamas.
All Caribbean Wrestling presented Fight for Paradise this past Saturday. Huge event in Nassau, Bahamas, and I'm very, very excited. We had WWE Hall of Famers, the APA, John Bradshaw Layfield, Ron Simmons in the building. It was incredible having them there. Several title matches, a lot of great moments, including the main event, which was historic. The first ever women's main event in the history of the Bahamas saw Maserati defend the All Caribbean Wrestling Championship against Kalia Capri. And congratulations to Kalia Capri, the brand new All Caribbean Wrestling Women's Champion, also the first Bahamian-born wrestler to win a championship in pro wrestling. So it was history being made like crazy this weekend at All Caribbean Wrestling. So, we also had two big debuts this weekend. And listen, when Mark Henry joined the company, we knew it was going to be big, but some of the names that are now signed on kind of blowing me away. Kalisto has been signed to All Caribbean Wrestling, which is wild. And that's insane. And then kind of a dream match, Kenny King, Lindsay Dorado, first time ever. And shortly after the match, Kenny King told the people of the Bahamas, hey, you need a hero. I'm your new hero. Then the hero got attacked by the villain. Marty Scurll is in All Caribbean Wrestling. Shocking. Shocking. I'm telling you, all kinds of things are happening at All Caribbean Wrestling. So yeah, things are getting wild. And I'm hearing random names who want to be a part of All Caribbean Wrestling right now. So it's a very hot ticket, a very, very hot ticket. You guys are going to want to keep your eyes out because some big things are coming for All Caribbean Wrestling in 2025. But yeah, it's official. Kalisto, Marty Scurll, the APA was in the building. The infantry took on the tag team champions, New Nation. It was the infantry's first international trip as well. So just so many huge moments this weekend at Fight for Paradise. Stay connected to All Caribbean Wrestling to find out when and where and how you can view that event. But what a crazy weekend. What a crazy weekend.
Wow.
Yes.
From what I know, Marty Scurll's been hiding in Australia for the last however many years. So,
well, he found his way to the Bahamas somehow.
He's been wrestling a lot. He's been wrestling a lot in South America. So to be fair, it probably makes sense. He's probably got a place out in South America. So the Caribbean is not too far from there, but it's still a big name for sure.
That's
huge name.
That's major. That's major. Yeah, it's crazy. And even going back to Arshay, you know, it's great to see the likes of like a Khan going over there as well. You know, he's someone that for maybe the last 2 or 3 years, especially since maybe towards the end of the pandemic, that I felt, you know, deserved or needed to have some type of singles run to kind of showcase what he's about and what he can do. So hopefully that can be jumpstart in some way at Arshay as well, which is, it should be very interesting. And especially with, you know, the championship coming up soon as well. Hopefully he'll find himself in that picture in some way. But yeah,
amazing.
It's amazing to know. It's amazing to know that we can still get excited by what happens on the indies.
Yes,
just as much as we can on, you know, on your WWEs and your Impact, AEW and stuff like that as well. But I think it's definitely about getting more eyes on all of these products and places. But Marty Scurll to
All Caribbean Wrestling. Yeah,
that's just mad. And you know, a few months ago we were talking about Patrick
Clark. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or appearing there at least. You know what I mean? So that's crazy. That's crazy. That's mad. That's mad. Yeah. On that note, we've gone through everything that we need to, and our time has come. You have been watching Wrstlxtra on the WrestleMania UK YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see us here every single week. You can also like and subscribe to see this guy Mex put out all of his stuff and reactions to WWE, AEW, everything else in between, and all of his interviews. Exclusives, as I like to say, but I see his face cringe every time I say that word as well. Also, you can find Mex on the Wrestling channel as well with the rest of the Mandem. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see their show every single week as well as their extra content as well. You can find Mex on WrestleMania.uk on X, WrestleMania UK on Instagram. I hope I got that the right way around. I don't know. I did. Oh, yes. And you can find this guy, Gerard Bonner, on all things Bonafide, as well as his own show, The Faction Show, as well as WWT Live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And also doing all of his stuff, of course, on Arshay Wrestling, All Caribbean Wrestling, Southern Honor Wrestling, The Nightmare Factory, IWE, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, and everywhere else you see this guy, because he just appears absolutely everywhere and has no day off. You can find me, A Dazzle, in the one place you need to find me, which is Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram. Guys, thanks for joining us, and we will see you again next time.